Ever feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose of information? You want to grasp something complex and fast, but sorting through all the noise feels impossible.
Yeah, we totally get it.
That's why we're diving deep today, just for you, the learner, into a foundational idea, principles.
Think of principles as those non-negotiable truths that shape how you approach basically everything.
Right.
We're exploring Ray Dalio's book, Principles. And our sources today really unpack why having these is essential. Some of Dalio's core philosophies and, how he's used them at Bridgewater.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally about a relentless pursuit of what's true and striving for excellence in all you do.
So whether you're gearing up for a crucial meeting, maybe playing catch-up in a whole new field, or just feeding that incredible curiosity of yours, you need to get up to speed quickly and thoroughly without feeling overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to extract the real power-ups, the key nuggets from these sources around principles, why they're game changers, and how you can use them to crush your own goals.
So Dalio sees principles as these deep-seated truths that inform your actions, right? Whether it's about your personal life or, say, running a company.
Okay.
And our focus today is really on understanding the power of having your own set of principles so you, the listener, can maybe start building yours.
What's really interesting, though, is that Dalio wasn't always keen on sharing these, was he?
No, not at all. He actually felt a bit presumptuous, I think is the word he used. Like he was telling people how to live their lives.
Right, yeah. A bit preachy, maybe.
Exactly. But he saw so many smart folks just hitting walls, often because they were bumping up against fundamental realities without even realizing it. That's what made him start documenting them. And it turns out he'd identified something like 200.
200, wow.
Yeah, quite a few. And as you consider these, Dalio's big encouragement, his big ask really, is to constantly ask yourself, is this true for me?
So don't just take his word for it.
Absolutely not. Really evaluate if each principle aligns with your own understanding of how the world works. Test it.
Okay, so the first part of his book really hammers home this core idea. Having principles that are actually effective, that work, is non-negotiable if you want to get where you're going in life.
Right. And it's also key for truly understanding where other people are coming from, understanding their operating systems,
Their own principles?
Exactly. Dalio's not saying, here's my blueprint, just follow it. He hopes that by grappling with his principles, you'll start to crystallize what works best for you.
So they evolve.
Yeah, they evolve from Ray's principles into my principles. He sees his work as a starting point, maybe a reference, to help you define what truly matters and how you want to act.
Now let's peek behind the curtain a bit at where Dalio's thinking took root. He came from a pretty standard middle-class background, right?
Yeah, and he's the first to admit he wasn't exactly a star pupil. Partly because, and I think a lot of us can relate to this, his rote memory was, let's just say it wasn't his strongest suit.
Okay, I get that.
What really ignited his curiosity was the why behind things. He couldn't just accept information at face value. He needed to understand the underlying mechanisms.
He needed it to make sense.
Precisely. He needed to be working towards something he cared about, which meant figuring things out independently, not just passively absorbing what he was told.
And this led him to develop, 5 key elements that really shaped his early approach.
That's right, 5 things. First, a constant drive to work for what he personally wanted, not what someone else told him to want.
Okay, self-direction.
Second, a relentless pursuit of his own best independent opinions. You know that story about him ordering all those annual reports as a teenager?
Yeah, total initiative.
Exactly. Then, crucially, number 3, he rigorously stress-tested those opinions. He'd engage with the sharpest minds he could find, really dissecting their reasoning, not just nodding at their conclusions.
Getting under the hood.
Fourth, he maintained a healthy skepticism of his own certainty. He knew he didn't know everything, so he developed strategies for navigating the unknown, either by digging for more info or by smartly limiting his risk.
Being aware of overconfidence, that's huge.
It is. And finally, number 5, and this feels like the bedrock of his entire approach. He was constantly engaging with real-world outcomes, seeing the direct results of his decisions.
Learning by doing.
And then intensely reflecting on what he could learn and how he could improve. This same core approach, these 5 steps, basically powered his entire career at Bridgewater.
Okay, so that's the foundation. Then part 2 of the book delves into his fundamental life principles.
Yes. And these are all about interacting with reality effectively so that you can learn and ultimately achieve your aspirations. He highlights common pitfalls, traps that can really derail
Yeah,
progress.
things to avoid.
Right. And underscores how significantly life can improve simply by avoiding them. And as he points out, his management principles are essentially these same core life principles just applied to a group dynamic like a company.
Interesting. So a central theme in those life principles seems to be that failure often stems from, what, a refusal to accept reality.
Pretty much a refusal to accept and engage with reality as it actually is. Whereas success is fundamentally about doing just that, embracing reality, warts and all.
And he has this really interesting idea about discomfort,
Mm,
that it's not something to just run from.
not at all. In fact, he argues it's often a prerequisite for growth. He calls it growing pains.
Like working out muscles. They tear a bit to get stronger.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Exactly. That discomfort signals that growth is happening. And it's vital to understand what truly motivated Dalio here. He states pretty clearly his primary goals weren't just financial.
Right, not just about the money.
No, he wanted a fascinating, diverse life filled with continuous learning, meaningful work, and deep relationships. And he believes he achieved this by consistently applying that 5-step foundational approach we just talked about.
He also introduces this concept of hyper-realism. Sounds a bit intense.
It does, maybe a bit sci-fi, but it's really about pursuing and achieving your goals by understanding and operating in accordance with the fundamental laws of the universe.
Okay, so working with reality, not against it.
Precisely. The idea is that progress isn't random. It emerges from grasping and leveraging these pre-existing natural principles.
Yeah.
Think about it like, well, innovations like flight or the internet didn't just materialize out of thin air.
No, they came from understanding physics, electromagnetism.
Exactly. It's about grounding your aspirations in the reality of how things actually function. So the key takeaway here for you, the listener, is don't just dream, understand the playing field and work with it.
And he makes this really insightful point about the pursuit itself, that the
Yeah.
journey, the striving, can be more rewarding than just getting the thing.
Yeah, often the act of striving, the challenges you overcome are more fulfilling than simply reaching the end point, partly due to that law of diminishing returns, right? The more you have of something, the less each additional bit satisfies you.
Makes sense.
He also sees a powerful connection between pursuing your own self-interest in a way that aligns with these universal laws and actually contributing to evolution, which he considers inherently good.
How so?
Well, he observes how many species instinctively act in their own self-interest, and that, in a larger sense, drives adaptation and progress for the species.
Okay. And what about making money? How does that fit in?
His argument is that there's a strong correlation between providing value to society and achieving financial success. It's not just about purely chasing the money itself.
So solve problems people have, offer something valuable.
And the money often follows. He even mentions that for him, making a lot of money was never the primary driver. If it had been, he probably would have stopped much earlier because of that diminishing returns thing.
Interesting.
And what distinguishes us as humans, he believes, is our exceptional capacity to learn. Because we can learn and adapt consciously, we can evolve at a significantly faster rate than other species. And he distills it down to this powerful equation: reality plus dreams plus determination. A successful life.
Reality, dreams, determination. I like that. And he's crystal clear that success is ultimately about achieving what you personally value, right? And subjective.
Totally subjective. It's up to each individual to define that. He's not judging whether that's building a corporate empire or creating a peaceful home life. The crucial element is clarity about your wants and then figuring out the path to get there.
And he also touches on some universal desires, like personal growth.
Yeah, that inherent drive we seem to have to learn and improve, and the fact that our sense of happiness is often relative to our expectations. Plus, he emphasizes that both meaningful work and meaningful relationships are vital for a deep sense of fulfillment.
Okay, so that covers the what and why. Now, shifting focus to how we actually make progress towards those goals,
Yeah.
decision-making seems key.
Absolutely central. He underscores that the quality of our lives is fundamentally determined by the quality of the decisions we make. And we make countless decisions, millions of them really.
Every single day.
Wow.
And where does the bulk of that learning come from? How do we get better at deciding?
Let me guess. Making mistakes.
Bingo. Making mistakes and then engaging in rigorous self-reflection. He urges us to reframe pain, emotional or otherwise, as a signal that something needs to be addressed, that progress is necessary.
Like touching a hot stove, the pain is immediate feedback.
Exactly. It prompts a change in behavior. He
Yeah.
even shares his own vulnerabilities, like that poor rote memory we mentioned,
Right.
and how he's consciously built systems and relationships to compensate,
Hmm.
surrounding himself with people who have complementary strengths, using technology as a cognitive tool. It's about knowing your weaknesses and addressing them.
That makes sense, and it highlights a challenge many people face accepting uncomfortable truths about themselves, those weaknesses. How do his principles help with that? It's hard to see your own blind spots.
That's a great point. It is hard. His whole system is kind of designed to force that confrontation, but in a constructive way. The emphasis on radical truth and transparency, the feedback loops, the stress testing ideas, it's all meant to bring those weaknesses into the light so you can deal with them, often with the help of others. It's less about blaming yourself and more about, okay, here's reality. How do we design around it or improve it?
So it's not about shame, but about problem solving.
Exactly. He also introduces this critical distinction between first-order consequences and second and subsequent order consequences.
Okay, break that down.
So first order is the immediate impact, second order is the impact after that, and so on. Often what feels good now, first order, like eating junk food.
Leads to bad outcomes later, second order, like feeling sluggish or health problems.
Right. And vice versa. Exercise might feel tough initially, first order negative, but the long-term benefits, second order positive, are huge. Successful people, he argues, consistently consider those longer-term impacts.
Thinking ahead.
Yep. He talks about how the natural world constantly tests us and isn't particularly sympathetic to our excuses. Successful people grasp this and take full ownership of shaping their own lives. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Taking responsibility.
He sums this up by saying that achieving your goals is highly probable if you can consciously minimize your ego, adopt a no-excuses mentality, and cultivate open-mindedness, determination, and courage.
Especially by leveraging others' strengths where you're weak.
Exactly. He even defines character as that inner strength to push yourself to do the difficult things that ultimately lead to the results you desire. Pushing boundaries leads to growth, doesn't it?
It does. It's uncomfortable, but that seems to be the point.
And all of this culminates in his famous 5-step process for getting what you want out of life.
Okay, the 5 steps. Let's hear them.
Step 1, set audacious goals. And he stresses keeping this phase distinct. Don't get bogged down in the how just yet. Focus purely on identifying what you truly want.
What you really want, not just what seems easy.
Precisely. And he emphasizes not confusing goals with mere desires. Goals are those deeply held aspirations. Desires are often fleeting impulses that can actually sabotage your goals.
Like scrolling social media when you should be working on that big project.
Perfect example. And he strongly advises against limiting your goals based on your current perception of what's achievable. Aim high first. The how can be figured out later.
Okay, so set big goals. Step 2.
Step 2. Ruthlessly identify and refuse to tolerate problems, the things standing between you and your goals. This requires staying logical, keeping emotions in check if possible.
View problems as opportunities.
Almost, yeah. View them as signals that need addressing. Solving them is what propels you forward. Finding them should almost be exciting because it means you're about to make progress.
Okay, step 3.
Diagnose those problems effectively. Root causes. He cautions against jumping to quick fixes or solutions. Really invest the time to understand why the problem is happening. Maintain a calm, logical approach.
Like a doctor diagnosing an illness before prescribing treatment.
Excellent analogy. That's step 3. Step 4 is designing a clear plan. After the diagnosis, this strategic thinking must precede any action.
So think before you leap.
Right. It doesn't need to be some massive, complex document necessarily. Maybe just hours or days of focused thought. But it's essential because it lays the groundwork for what you'll actually do. It creates your actionable to-do list.
Got it. Diagnosis, then plan. And finally, step 5.
Diligently doing the tasks. Execute the plan. This is where self-discipline and effective work habits are absolutely paramount. The best plans are worthless without consistent execution.
You got to do the work.
You got to do the work. Be proactive, stay focused, remain results-oriented, push through obstacles.
And what if you're weak in one of those steps? Like, say, planning isn't your forte.
That's a crucial point he makes. Weaknesses in any of these 5 steps don't have to be a roadblock. The key is recognizing those weaknesses and actively seeking out individuals who excel in those areas to complement your skills.
Get help.
Build a team, even if it's an informal one. Exactly. He uses the analogy of life being a game with choices and consequences, where problems are simply calls to action, prompting you to find innovative solutions.
Okay, that 5-step process seems very practical. Now let's pivot slightly and discuss those management principles. How do they connect?
He views them as essentially his core life principles, but applied within the context of a group, a company, a team, any collaborative effort, really.
So the same foundation, just scaled.
Pretty much. And he stresses the fundamental importance of a shared set of values and principles for shaping any group's culture. This agreed-upon culture, in turn, dictates everything: how objectives are defined, how challenges are addressed, how tasks get done.
The operating system for the group.
You got it.
Yeah.
He also introduces the concept of feedback loops as being absolutely vital for rapid organizational evolution. He talks about an organization machine that needs constant tuning through feedback.
Makes sense. Continuous improvement.
He acknowledges that embracing this way of working and living this radical truth and transparency can be demanding, it's challenging, but he firmly believes it's the most effective path to maximizing potential, both individually and collectively.
And we mentioned there are over 200 specific management principles.
Yeah, which indicates the depth and detail of this framework. We can't cover them all, obviously, but several key themes are really relevant for you, the listener, especially if you're interested in effective operation and decision-making.
Like what?
Things like the critical importance of open-mindedness and genuinely valuing the believability of different perspectives. We can dig into that one more.
Okay.
Also, the necessity of clear and effective communication to ensure everyone is in sync. Getting the right people in the right roles, holding both oneself and others accountable.
Accountability is big.
Huge. Plus, strategically designing the machine itself, the organization or system, to achieve objectives. Making sound decisions by acknowledging what you don't know, understanding probabilities, and prioritizing effectively.
And learning from mistakes again.
Absolutely crucial. Consistently identifying, rigorously analyzing, and actively learning from mistakes. And it's all about continuously synthesizing information, seeing how all the pieces interconnect.
Okay, let's delve deeper into one of those as an example, like you suggested. Learning from mistakes within that group context. How does that work?
So Dalio emphasizes cultivating an environment, a culture, where making mistakes is viewed as normal, even necessary for innovation.
Yeah.
But failing to learn from those mistakes, that's
What?
unacceptable.
Okay, mistakes are okay, not learning isn't.
Precisely. Essentially, turn every mistake into a lesson learned and documented. That's the core insight.
He shares that anecdote about Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah, it's a compelling one. Apparently, Jordan not only accepted but even embraced and learned immensely from his mistakes, even outside of basketball. He became a champion by using those errors as fuel for improvement. But Dalio points out how often our ego just gets in the way.
The ego barrier.
Right. It erects a barrier to this crucial learning process. That's why he underscores the importance of documenting and openly acknowledging weaknesses, your own and others. Hiding them just hinders progress.
So back to that pain plus reflection progress equation.
Exactly. And a practical tool he champions for this is the issues log.
An issues log, what's that?
It's basically a mandatory record, usually shared, of anything that didn't go as planned. A mistake, a problem, a near miss. It's all about systematically identifying those missteps and extracting valuable lessons publicly.
So for you, the learner, this could translate to keeping a record of what study methods worked and which didn't, maybe why a certain approach to a project failed, and then reflecting on why.
That's a perfect personal application. He also stresses the significance of achieving cinch.
Getting in cinch. What does that practically look like in a company setting, and why is it so critical, according to Dalio?
Getting in cinch is basically reaching a shared understanding among the relevant people about what is true, what the reality of the situation is, and then what needs to be done about it. It's achieved through open, honest, often tough conversations where people debate respectfully but rigorously. It's critical because without that shared understanding, people pull in different directions, efforts are wasted, and suboptimal decisions get made. It avoids the talking past each other problem.
Okay, so it's about shared reality and agreed action.
Yeah,
But he also says not all opinions are equal.
right. And this is where the concept of believability comes in. It doesn't imply that all opinions hold the same weight in that cinching process.
Believability. Based on what?
Based primarily on two things: an individual's proven track record in the relevant area and the soundness and clarity of their reasoning. How well can they explain the why behind their view?
So it's not just about who's loudest or has the highest title.
Ideally, no. For instance, if you're debating a marketing strategy, the opinion of someone with a history of successful campaigns who can clearly articulate their rationale would naturally carry more believability than, say, a junior team member offering just a hunch with no data or experience behind it.
That establishes a kind of hierarchy of merit then.
Exactly, a meritocracy of ideas weighted by believability. Finally, related to cinching, he emphasizes the vital need to spend lavishly on it.
Spend lavishly, meaning time and effort.
Yes, invest significant time and energy in achieving that cinch because the return on that investment in terms of better decisions, fewer misunderstandings, faster progress is exceptionally high. Don't rush it.
Got it. So to bring it all together then, the fundamental takeaway here is the profound importance of having these well-defined principles.
Yeah, principles to guide you through life's complexities and enable you to achieve your goals. Dalio's five-step process provides a really actionable framework for putting this into practice.
And that central idea of embracing reality, learning from errors, those are the core engines of progress.
Absolutely. And for you, the learner, these principles offer a powerful lens, a way to approach your own learning and decision-making in any context. Understanding and applying these ideas can be a real shortcut, a framework for gaining that deep understanding you're after without feeling overwhelmed.
So back to that key takeaway. Don't just dream, understand the playing field and work with it.
Precisely.
Mm.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe ponder. Now that you've explored these foundational ideas, what is maybe one key principle that particularly resonates with you right now? Something you might start intentionally applying in your own life or work?
And maybe think about how you might actively test its validity in your own experience.
Yeah, and really consider that distinction Dalio makes between those immediate first-order desires and your deeper, more meaningful second and third-order goals.
This deep dive is really just the beginning, isn't it?
Definitely. We encourage you to explore Ray Dalio's principles further or delve into related concepts to continue building your understanding.
Especially with over 200 principles hinted at, there's clearly a wealth of knowledge still waiting to be uncovered there.